Do influencers owe us authenticity, transparency, and honesty? I was on Instagram today and an influencer wrote that they just had a baby and they were using bio oil to get rid of their stretch marks. And so they wrote, the stretch marks are improving, the visibility is improving, they're going away. And then at the bottom, it said, love your marks, ad. So I was really confused by the hashtag. They were talking about love your marks, but I was struggling to understand how trying to get rid of your marks is loving your marks. And so I posed to my community on Instagram if it's possible to love something but want to get rid of it. Can I love being fat but then want lipo? Can I love my big nose but then want it more aquiline? Can I love my hooded eyelids but then want them more almond shaped? Is that how that works? Is it more complex? Maybe. That's another discussion. More than that, what really came out of that conversation for me was, do influencers owe us anything? Do they owe us transparency? Do they owe us honesty? Do they owe us authenticity even? A lot of people say yes, especially when they're being sold a product or being influenced to buy something or to feel a certain way about a good or service. And that's why we have the hashtag ad thing now, which I understand, which is fine. But what's curious to me is that I feel like the question is less, do influencers owe us these things, and more, do we owe these things to each other as people on every level? Because all of us are influencers, micro-influencers, influential. We were before Instagram popped up, and we will be way after Instagram has died or mutated into something else. So I think I often find that we par off the responsibility to be authentic, accountable, and honest to figures that we have decided are somehow elevated above us or have more influence or more power. And I think we can often conflate the fact that someone has a bigger audience to having a bigger responsibility, which I don't agree with, because what that does is, again, it robs you of the responsibility to hold yourself accountable for how you're behaving. So if you're not an influencer, if you don't have Instagram, would you still hold yourself to the standard of being authentic, accountable, open, transparent? And if you wouldn't, I think it's odd to hold other people to that standard. And the reason is because, so it starts on the ground with civilians, where we say, I only have 100 followers. Why do I have to be responsible about my content? Why can't I project a lifestyle and a persona that has nothing to do with who I am? And then as that person with 100 followers becomes an influencer, that's how they feel. As that influencer becomes a TV presenter, becomes an actor, becomes a director, they still carry that energy of it's not my responsibility, it should be the government. And then when we look at government, even they too are piling off responsibility. Just look at the way some governments are talking about climate change.
It's the responsibility of corporations.
Look at the way corporations are talking about climate change.
We need to use paper stores and it's the global south, we're having too many babies.
So this culture of piling off responsibility starts with us, and that's why for me, the question of do influencers owe us is misdirected and is symptomatic of us being comfortable with not accepting the responsibility and the influence we have as individuals. Because I really believe the only way we have community-wide, global transformation is if we transform ourselves, and that energy of whose responsibility is it because it's not mine isn't transformative energy. And that's just what I wanted to highlight. So I don't believe, for the most part, I don't think anyone owes anyone anything. People in government step into the role and accept the responsibility of looking after our well-being. So that's actually a role about responsibility and onus and care. So because you have chosen that, I would expect that. And I think parents or caregivers are also in a biological social contract to look after young people. But beyond that, I think no one necessarily owes anyone anything. I think it's a choice. I think you can opt in and opt out of caring and being kind and being thoughtful and being compassionate and transparent. But the payoff is that when you are honest, when you are authentic, you win because you are your true self. And a byproduct of that is everyone wins. Your community feels empowered to be authentic too. And truly, we're all on a journey to return to self. We all want to be the authentic us that we know ourselves to be. So when you're authentic, I can be authentic, and I can empower people around me to be authentic. So we all win. When you win, we win. But when you project an image or a lifestyle or a persona that isn't your own, that isn't authentic, you either play catch up to that shadow character, to your foil, or you are trying to escape with your whole life. So you don't win, and no one else wins, because that inauthenticity, which is always fear-based, inspires fear or affirms the fear in other people. So when you win, we win. When I win, you win. And that's why I advocate for authenticity. But I don't believe anyone owes it to me. So I think I've answered that question. But I think more than anything, I wanted to explain that I think it's so much more complex than who owes us. It's rather, what do we owe ourselves, and what standards are we going to hold ourselves for ourselves and for our community? And when we do that, when we have inner transformation, that is felt on every single level of society. So I think we should start posing those questions, less to public figures and more to ourselves, because that's how human revolution comes about. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you think it's a cop-out when we as adults hold people to standards we wouldn't hold ourselves to? Or do you think if you step into a social position, you naturally inherit a responsibility that people who aren't in that position don't have to uphold?